It's time now for the KC Ingram Show, WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's KC Ingram.
Tired of lines at the boat launch, sun damage, or not using your boat because of the hassle? Call Meridian Marina and Yacht Club because we do all the work so you can enjoy your boating lifestyle. We store your boat inside, launch it with a wash with just 30 minutes notice, and rinse it down before putting it back. Need new electronics, service, detailing, bottom paint? No problem. Our experienced certified techs will make sure your boat is in tip-top shape and ready to head to the sandbar, fishing, or the Bahamas. Call us up at 772-221-8198. That's 221-8198. Or visit us online at meridianmarina.com. In the studio this evening, I'm very proud to have a guest that is well renowned with Lake Okeechobee. We have Dr. Paul Gray, and he is the Okeechobee Science Coordinator for Audubon, Florida. So, Dr. Gray, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule and coming into the studio. And we're going to talk a lot about Lake Okeechobee and the water levels.
Thanks so much for having me, and that seems to be my favorite topic. So
I'm glad it is your favorite topic because we've talked about it a lot this year. This year, ahead of the rainy season, water was discharged from the lake in hopes that we didn't have to discharge to the east and west. So
Right.
It went to the south. And consequently, we didn't have a huge rainy season. And there was, I think, just a few pulse discharges that went to the east and west. And
Right.
our water this year, at least on the side of the state or the East Coast, has been so much better. We didn't have the toxic algae blooms and whatnot. So
Right.
on the other side of that, we've heard a lot of people coming in and said, oh, you just can't do that. It's unhealthy for the lake. So that's why I wanted you to come in. You're the expert that have been studying this. Your predecessor, I believe, started in 1936, and we'll talk about that. But certainly Audubon, Florida has a history of what's studying the lake and what's good for the lake. So,
Yeah. Well, and so, the lake is right in the middle of the water management system. The headwaters are up. Basically, if you landed at the Orlando International Airport, that's the headwaters of the Everglades and the headwaters of Okeechobee. And all the water from Orlando down flows into Lake Okeechobee. It's like the neck of an hourglass. And then it goes somewhere. It goes down the estuaries. It goes to the Everglades. And for the Corps of Engineers, they use the lake for flood control. When it rains in the Kissimmee Valley and you want to get rid of the flood water, you want to put it in the lake. And so in order to do that, you have to have the lake as low as you can get it in order to have a lot of storage capacity. But the Water Management District also has to give irrigation water to farmers and reserve water for cities for droughts. And so in order to have as much water available, they want to have it as high as possible. So here we have these two agencies. One needs the lake high to meet their goals. One needs it low to meet their goals. Guess what? We fight over water levels all the time.
constantly, every year, every day, every week, every hour, it seems
Yeah.
like. And it's a big tug of war there. And then, of course, it's Florida. We have our rainy season, and we
Right.
can get feet of water at a time, or we may not get very much water.
Yeah.
But Dorian was a very good example. It stayed off the coast, and we really, fortunately, lucked out. But that could have been a huge rain event over Lake Okeechobee. So I think that's where a lot of the fighting comes from, is the what if.
Mm-hmm.
What if we don't get rain? What if we do?
Yeah. So if you were to put boundaries on where we want the lake to get, we never really want it to get below 11 feet. That dries it out too much, and it threatens water supply for everybody, including the lake. And we never want it to get above about 17 feet because that starts making it unsafe on the dike. So there's a 6-foot range in there that we can kind of operate between. 17 feet also turns out to be really, really bad for the marsh. And that's what Irma did. And really, it destroyed about 75 square miles of plant communities on the lake just from being that deep and drown them. But so this range of 6 feet, well, in 2004, remember we had those 4 tropical systems, Charlie, Francis, Jean, and Ivan crossed, and the lake went up 6 feet in just 2 months. And if our entire range of fluctuation, we don't want to be more than 6 feet, and one storm can do that, one wet season. It really makes it hard because if you keep it too low or too high, it'll breach the dike. And
Right.
so, right now today we're about 13.75. So we're kind of right in the middle between 11 and 17. So that's a pretty good spot. If the rain stopped now and September seems to be really dry, we probably should get through the next dry season okay. But if another storm comes in, we should probably get through that okay. It would raise the lake 2 or 3 feet, and it wouldn't be dangerous to the dike. It wouldn't be good for the lake, but we would be safe. So that's kind of what the Corps has to shoot for. And then you hope Mother Nature cooperates.
Of course, and always. And Commissioner Becky Bruner just checking in here said, Doc definitely knows the lake and all the animals living in or near it and all the plants, birds, and the lake levels too. So she appreciates all your help here with the city of Stewart.
Yeah, no, she's great.
So tell us a little bit more, Dr. Gray, that this year, what did they do ahead of the rainy season? They did discharge some of the water to the south. To what level did they take Lake Okeechobee, and what has it done with the lake?
Okay, so last year was not a real wet year, and the lake was still relatively high because of residual of Irma, because Irma went all the way up to 17 feet. But we didn't have a really wet summer last year. And so as the lake was dropping this spring, which we wanted to do because you want the lake to draw down and get ready for the next hurricane season, and it's good for the ecology of the lake to have that dry period, the Corps saw the opportunity to get the lake down to about 11 feet. And I remember, I told you about we lost all those plants. Well, the ones we lost are the ones that grow on the bottom between 9 and 11 feet. And once they're gone, they can't grow back until the sunlight reaches the bottom. And with the lake being as dirty as it is and turbid, you got to get the lake down to about 11 feet. And so we talked to the Corps and said, if you could get to 11 feet, the sunlight would reach the bottom, the plants would start regrowing, and we could restart this really important plant community. That's where the bass fishery lives. I
think number 8, Iggy, will kind of demonstrate what the lake looked like in April of 2019 to just September 17th of 2019 when we're talking about the submerged aquatic vegetation.
Yeah, and so you look at that the picture up in the top in April, and notice those little rosettes on the bottom. Those are little baby eel grasses, and they're so cute. And then you go back in May, and they're taller. And we were just out there last week with some people from the Corps, and you could see in some spots, now the whole lake doesn't look like this bottom picture, but some spots look like that. And this is the most important plant community in the whole lake. This is where the bass fishery lives. Once these plants get in there, the water clears up because they clean the water, and you have just beautiful, pristine water. So so we got down to 11 feet. The recovery has started. We're really excited about it because sometimes you'll lose those plants in hurricanes, and until you get another drought, they don't grow back, and the lake's just kind of dirty and muddy on the outside, and then that's not good for anybody.
And just the grasses in the lake are so important. We're so familiar with it here in the estuary. We lost so many grasses, and it is
right.
It's the hatcheries for the fish. So without that, it disrupts the whole ecosystem.
It's exactly the same thing. It's the base of your ecosystem, and until you grow grasses back, you can't get everything else back. And so there's a lag time. And so fortunately, we had Irma in 2017, and in 2018 and 19, we were able to get the lake down. And so we started the recovery. We'll see how much has grown back. They just went out and did some sampling now. And it takes a couple years to regrow all that, but at least we have signs of recovery. And actually, we really thank the Corps for seeing the opportunity. They only let about 5 inches of water out of the lake to try to lower it. And, if you look at what the farmers take every year, they take about a foot of water for irrigation. So, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that much, but there was an opportunity to get close to 11, and they did it, and it worked, and the lake's come back up. So we're real happy about where we are.
Are they able to do that every year?
No. There's been talk about, well, if we drew the lake down to 10 feet every year, then we wouldn't be afraid of a hurricane, and we wouldn't have to do these proactive dumps, that get mixed up with algae blooms and polluted water and all that stuff to the St. Lucie. But like after Irma, if you get up to 17 feet, trying to get the lake back down to 10 feet in 1 year, you dump so much water that the estuary would be so dead it wouldn't matter. So you can only really lower the lake about 4 feet a year without too much trouble to the estuaries. And so in 17-foot years, we can only expect to get down to 13. That's not really the best for the lake either, but practically that's kind of what you have to do to manage the lake. And that's the important thing. People think, we can just raise it or lower it. Really, our management of Okeechobee, it's so big. I mean, it has a huge watershed. The watershed's 5 times bigger than the lake. And basically our management, 50% of what the lake level is any given day is what we're doing, and the other 50% is what Mother Nature does. And if we get a hurricane, the lake just goes up 3 feet. Nobody can stop it. If we get a drought, the lake will drop 3-4 feet. Nobody can stop that either. And so we're kind of in the middle trying to manage between, the very wet and the very dry. Again, we try to stay in the middle, and that's the best for the marsh, and that's the best for the estuary. But Mother Nature, and that's what the SERP, the Everglades Restoration, we want to build more storage north, south, east, and west of the lake. And when it's wet, we'll catch that water, not in the lake. We'll catch it somewhere beneficial, like a reservoir. They're building a big reservoir on the C-44, the St. Lucie Canal. And and we'll catch that water when it's wet. And then when a drought starts, we have that water left over to help us with the drought. And so, that's what SERP is really basically trying to catch that water and not waste it to
Instead of
tide.
just throwing it away, right?
Yeah. And then when the drought starts, because in 2004 and 5, we dumped enough water to meet all the needs of the farmers for 6 years. That's how much water we dumped. Yeah.
Wow.
And the next year we were in a drought and they were getting cut back 50%. And so it's not because we don't get enough water, it's because we throw it away.
We have no way to keep it and put it in a reservoir, which SERP will end up doing for us.
Yeah.
How much water actually, if goes down to the South counties for drinking water?
Normally not very much. The EAA, the Everglades Agricultural Area south of Lake Okeechobee, their runoff usually fills up the water conservation areas and stuff.
Okay.
And in the future, when we do some more projects and take out some of the things that we can run more water south, we'll run more lake water.
Okay.
But presently, usually not very much. But the lake, again, is the backup. If their areas go dry and they need water and they need emergency water, we can try to get water from the lake down to them.
Okay. Icky, if you can go to slide number 12, effective high lake stages and water quality. Dr. Gray, if you can talk about this slide a little bit. And for those of you listening, I should actually let you describe it better than I. You're the scientist.
And this is a slide I stole from the Water Management District, but they do really good work. So you can see the picture of the boat driving through the bright green algae, and everybody knows by now that that's terrible. But what it does is it on the right side, there's a graph, and it graphs the minimum lake stage with the amount of algae the following year. And basically, the lower the lake gets in the spring, the less algae you have in the summer. And the higher the lake, if the lake doesn't drop very much in the spring, and that's kind of what happened after Irvin. The lake got really deep because it had so much water flow into it and it carried so much nutrients. And then when the water cleared up in the summer, all those nutrients spawned an algae bloom, the raging algae bloom in 2018. So those deep levels in the springtime portend bad algae blooms. And this year we didn't have as deep of levels. We had algae blooms in the lake, but they weren't nearly as raging as they were in 2018. And then the big algae blooms in 2016, they came after an El Nino, where a whole bunch of water glugged into the lake, carried a whole bunch of phosphorus and nitrogen. And then when the summer came, we'd fertilize the lake and we got these. Again, if we can build this storage where we don't glug all that water into the lake, it helps solve not only the water level problems, but can help us avoid these nutrient influx problems too.
So you're saying it is extremely important we continue on with SERP and to make sure we complete those projects that this year lowering the lake ahead of the rainy season, that's simply one arrow in our quiver. We can't depend on that.
Yeah, I mean, that was only a few inches. And what we really want is to change the lake levels by feet when we need to.
Which makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about that last slide. You were just talking about Hurricane Irma, and this is where you were talking about the sage. And I'll let you describe this one as well. We have a picture of Lake Okeechobee on one side and a graph on the other.
Yeah, so this is a pretty dramatic picture. When Irma came in, it moved in from the south, and the wind blew across the lake from the east coast to the west coast for all day long at about 60 to 80 miles an hour. And what that graph shows is that's the time of day. And basically the peak in there, that green peak, if you notice, it's the same color as the S134. Is that the number? On the west side of the lake. And so at midnight or so, it was 20 feet deep on the west side of the lake. And at exactly the same time, if you look at that purple structure and the purple line, it was only 10 feet deep on the other side. So the lake had a 10-foot difference in elevations on both sides, and that's that storm surge that Lake Okeechobee has.
And it's just absolutely crazy to think about. And then, of course, that's got to, as the lake is settling, kind of bring up all the turbidity in the water, and you have the residual muck on the bottom that gets turned up.
Yeah, so we have that one slide that is slide number, what's that, 7?
We have, I think it...
and it has that little map that has the brown area, muddy water. So there's a mud bottom in the lake.
5, I think it is. Gray areas, marshy, clean water.
Yeah, there you go. And so that brown area in the bottom figure of the lake, that's where the mud is. And we think historically, like when the hurricane hit Belglade, there was a 12-foot wall of water that went over it in 1928. And that probably cleaned the lake out. It took all that suspended mud and cleaned it out. We built a dike around the lake, and now we have hurricanes and it stirs the mud up, but it doesn't wash it out of the lake. And so if you look at where the St. Lucie is hooked in, it's where that red arrow is on the right, and it's right next to that mud center. So not only we had the big hurricane, we had big dumps, but you guys got just horribly muddy water. And that's the same stuff that kills the plants in the lake, because when it makes the water so dark they can't get light. They're photosynthetic. And so not only get deep water, but the plants are also down in the dark. So these things synergize. And again, if we can build these projects, we can have a different future than what we're having in the present.
And it's so important. And I would imagine too, having the plants in the lake helps clean the water.
Yeah.
In addition.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we spent like $1 billion trying to build marshes south of the lake to clean water. And we have it for free in the lake if we can just keep the lake under control.
Keep it at the right levels and keep the water cleaner so it's clearer.
Yeah.
I did have a question come in ahead of the show here, and it said, can you acidify the water by spraying massive amounts of hydrogen peroxide on algae growing on sewage, creating an environment for the brevis creature to thrive on and to create red tide? Severe lightning storms can also create massive amounts of hydrogen peroxide.
Well, the open water area of the lake is about 500 square miles, and that's a lot of peroxide. And of course, it's like 10 feet deep too. So, and then changing the chemistry of the lake could have really big ecosystem impacts. So, in a little retention pond near your house, you can do things like that. But in a lake this large, it's so expensive and could have other unintended consequences.
And this lake is extremely large, and that's another reason why I think that there has been or there hasn't been the ability to really bring all that legacy muck out.
Yeah, so they did a study to see, well, could we just dredge it out and start over? And the problem was it would cost $3 billion, and there were two possible scenarios. One was the really light flocculent stuff that gets up in the water column. We might not be able to get that. That's the hardest stuff to catch. And so you could spend $3 billion and the lake wouldn't really be much better. Or if it actually worked and you did get that stuff out, then the lake would clear up. And then when you had the water inflows, because we still have a lot of polluted water flowing into the lake, it would spawn out algae blooms all the time because the water would be clear and they'd be getting plenty of sunlight. The turbidity in the lake actually limits the algae with sunlight and ironically helps protect us from even worse algae blooms. So with those two
That's
scenarios,
the silver lining in the algae cloud.
yeah, well, so dredging it, if it worked, it wouldn't work, and if it didn't work, it wouldn't work. So they just, for now, we're just going to try to clean the watershed up north of the lake. When we get better flows, then we can go back and revisit the dredging question.
So Dr. Gray, you are a wealth of information, and I just want to go back to that second slide I gave. Just talk a little bit about your position and the information that you have. I mean, your position started back in 1936. Marvin Chandler was the first.
Yeah. So this guy, I actually have his job. This is Marvin Chandler, the first of four of the Chandler family to work for Audubon for about 40 years. And you notice he has two belt buckles. One's actually a badge, and this is back when the Game and Fish Commission wasn't very big and they didn't have many officers, or even any perhaps. And so Audubon would hire people, the state would deputize them. And so he carried a badge and a gun, and they don't let me do that. So I just go to meetings now. But notice he's holding a snake, and that's a water moccasin. And they were out on the lake photographing glossy ibises, because at that time, 95% of all the glossy ibises in North America were nesting on Lake Okeechobee, and now they're everywhere. That's a success story. But anyway, they couldn't get around the snake on the way back because it's a water moccasin, and they had to kill it. And they opened up its stomach. See how fat it is? It had in its stomach a tricolored heron egg, 3 glossy ibis eggs, another egg that was partly digested, a baby American egret, and an adult glossy ibis.
Oh my goodness.
So if you find water moccasins, they're fun to play with.
So tell me, we'll skip over here to number 16 with all the birds. What's the ecology of the lake with the connection with all of the different birds?
Okay, so these are what we call neotropical migrants, and these are the little bug-eating birds. And there's just a lot of reporting about how many fewer birds we have now. Like we've lost 3 billion birds from the former population in North America. And these are the guys that go to our northern forests in the summer, and they eat bugs and they breed and they sing and they're beautiful. And then in the winter, they go to South America or Central America. And so they actually put some tents over trees in Missouri that birds couldn't get through. And the trees had outbreaks of caterpillars and stuff, and it slowed down their growth so much that it was significantly slower than the trees next to them in the forest. And so even if you're a forester in Pennsylvania, you care what happens to Lake Okeechobee, because these birds have to get fat before they fly across the ocean. And if they can't find food when they get here, they can't make it across the ocean. They double their body weight in fat.
Wow.
And if you notice the slide right before that, the periphyton slide.
Yes.
See how clear that water is?
Yes, I was going to ask about that. Yes.
July 2018, when we were having the raging algae blooms, this is the marsh. This is the back marsh. This is 2 miles from the middle of the lake. And notice these guys have their hands in 6 inches of water. and it's
Yes.
crystal clear. So, and
Beautiful.
we were drinking this water. I'd take reporters back there and I'd drink it for them and say,
Wow.
so the lake has a problem in the middle, but the marsh can still be just fabulous. And so you can see this little paraphyton. It's the same stuff that's in the Everglades. It's kind of this mix of different little blue-green algae and all kinds of little organisms. And you can see the other picture, it dries up into little chiclets. They're little flakes. You can pick them up. It's kind of like a sponge. And when they get wet, they expand and they grow.
Oh my gosh.
It's just part of the magic of the lake that people don't
No.
realize all the time.
People definitely do not realize that. And also the slide before that, we'll just keep going backwards here a little bit. The emergent vegetation zone. This is the areas on one side of the graph. You have the lake. The green boxes are where there's really good plants present, right?
Yeah. And so, so the emergent marsh zone, that's the stuff that grows up out of the water. The green boxes actually in that slide are the submergent, and that's the stuff we lose when we get to high water.
Okay.
And that's the stuff that we're growing back and we had the pictures of. But again, 1/3 of the lake is vegetated marsh, and it's just fabulous. And people don't get to see it. And it, they have jokes about the lake looking like a toilet in Florida, and that's, it's partly true, but
sometimes it is with the turbidity,
but we also at the same time have this beautiful habitat full of birds and alligators and fish, and it's just, I'm lucky because I have an airboat and I can get back there and see it. So.
Yes, it's an amazing lake. Let's talk a little bit about the slide with the I think it's number 11, Lake Okeechobee cyanobacteria bloom potential.
Right. So that was 2018. At the very same time we were back in the marsh drinking the water above the paraphyton, the middle of the lake was blowing up in algae, because there's no other plants out there to take up the nutrients. Okay. And so that's the two parts of Okeechobee. One is the marsh and one's the open water. And that's the stuff that we're going to have to clean up the water flowing into the lake. And that's going to require the storage projects to slow it down. And then when we send it to the lake, we need to clean it. And that's a lot of work. It's the Blue-Green Algae Task Force was meeting today. They're going to meet again tomorrow. And part of their recommendations, hopefully, are going to be, how do we get this to stop happening? How do we clean our water up?
Which that's a task force you've just joined. Is that correct?
Well, no, I'm not on that one, but I'm on some others. But
okay, we won't go into the task force today. There's too many.
Yeah, there are.
So tell us, Dr. Gray, we got just a couple minutes here, but with the CERT projects, what do you see on the horizon? What's the next projects that are going to come online and really help us continue to clean Lake Okeechobee, make sure when we do have discharges, they're as clean as possible? Okay,
here in St. Lucie, we have the C44 reservoir and stormwater treatment area. And that's right along the St. Lucie Canal. And it's not going to help with Okeechobee. It's going to help with local water. And we'll put the water in the reservoir. We'll run it through the filter marsh. And when it comes out, we can send it out whenever we want at the right time, and it'll be clean. And then the other big project is the Everglades Agricultural Area Reservoir. That's the single most important project for us to do next. It'll take a while. It's huge. It's very expensive. But if we can get that done, we can start sending more water south and not dumping it east and west.
We've seen a lot of changes here politically in the last, almost a little over, about a year.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of positive things happening for funding. Have you seen more funding coming our way to help with these projects?
Yes, both at the federal and state level. And so nothing like disasters to get people more engaged, but
right.
it has helped. And people are trying to, if we're going to fix this, we got to spend money. And if we don't, this is going to be our life. And I don't think anybody's satisfied with what Florida is right now. So we need to fix it back up, and it's going to take work and money, but we live in paradise. We got to protect it.
We do live in paradise. And I don't want to negate here that you work for Audubon Florida. Tell us a little bit about that, what people can do to come involved.
Okay. So Audubon is a bird conservation organization. We're a nonprofit. I'm in our Everglades program, but we work all over the United States. And you can Google us up, AUDUBON, and we have all kinds of action alerts, and you can get newsletters and all kinds of stuff if you want. So
very, very good to follow Audubon Florida, and you can follow them on Facebook and get a lot of updates when you're out in the field, when you did get to go out and see what's happening out on Lake Okeechobee. So do you ever get a chance to work here in the river?
I work on the river in relation to the lake.
Right.
Carl Wickstrom actually took me out one time in his boat. I was really happy for that opportunity, but mostly I work on the lake and trying to figure out how to keep it from harming the estuaries and helping the Everglades and keeping the lake healthy. And so I come to the River Coalition meetings every month and do what I can.
Well, Dr. Paul Gray, we truly appreciate all the work you do. You gave us some great information here today. The biggest question was, can we lower Lake O every year like we did this year?
No.
Yep, the answer is resounding no.
And no snail kites nest on the lake. They're an endangered species, but we're in recovery mode. So for recovery mode, you go to 11 feet, but other than that, you don't want to do that every year.
So it helped us this year, but we still have to make sure we're accomplishing SERP and hope for some moderate rain years.
Yeah.
I don't want dry, but moderate would be nice.
Yeah, it doesn't make water managers look so bad if the weather behaves.
There you go. There you go. Thank you again, Dr. Gray. We're going to finish the show out this evening. We have the News Minute on September 24th. And this is from Barbara Cloudis with the Martin County Currents. Perhaps buoyed by the governor's stance in June that cities should be allowed to choose whether or not to ban plastic straws, the city of Stuart took the first step at last night's regular commission meeting to do just that. After an hour-long workshop, the city's third workshop on eliminating single-use plastics within city boundaries, commissioners agreed to two proposed laws, one to ban plastic straws and another for recycling on city-owned property and at events. The proposed laws now go before the city of Stuart's two formal public hearings on October 14 and October 28. If passed, the laws would be rolled out slowly in 2020 and take effect in 2021. That would automatically exempt nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and hospitals. It would not, however, exempt drive-through restaurants that serve milkshakes or smoothies. The city commissioners also intend to pursue the establishment of a regional composting facility to serve the counties and municipalities of the Treasure Coast to maximize its sustainability efforts. This News Minute is brought to you by our WSTU 1450 radio audience by Martin County Currents, your alternative source of local news. And folks, Commissioner Mike Meyer will be in here on October 8th and we'll be discussing this very ordinance.